movie is based, and Darren is seen being chased towards the end of the trailer. It allows the snippet of information to make its way into the consciousness of the viewer without them realising it. I also edited the picture slightly so the fuller, broader trees were towards Darren's character, while the weaker, flimsier ones were rightly orientated towards the antagonists. I edited this with the Magic Wand tool to put subtle hints of good versus evil. 9 out of 10 won't notice it, but it is designed to alter their conception on the subconscious level. I made the base image on both the poster and the website black and white because the colours that shone out were damaging to my colour scheme. The greens, the browns, the oranges ruin the effect of the very rigidly implemented white, black, red scheme I had established. According to Irving Goffman's theory, there should be 4 types of characters in a film or television show. In this website, just 2 are shown, keeping the audience guessing as to the identities of the others. The protagonist features as do the duologists, as does the other one. However, the bit player and fool remain out of the picture because they hold little interest with mainstream viewers. The font, remaining consistent throughout, is aimed at both looking old and connotating religion. The colours, especially in the poster, stand out greatly on a more aesthetic basis against the white background, meaning they are effective in advertising the products. Red, as I have said, is a highly hostile colour, a colour which horror movies have come to love and use proficiently over the years. While I was able to change the conventions of using black as the prominent colour, it would have been ineffective and highly risky, too much so, to use a more obscure colour instead of red. I felt that changing this colour would have been an altered convention too far. On the site I used bilateral symmetry between the good and evil characters to establish clearly who is in the plot. They are looking at each other, clearly showing they are in conflict, the expression on Darren's face being fear, while the killer's face is being obscured. This keeps a huge amount of intrigue as to the antagonist is yet to be revealed. The costume itself is incredibly threatening also. People are afraid of the unknown. It's a common theme in horror movies, and I was keen to tap into this convention also. The reasoning behind the luminosity effect being used on the focal images of both the trailer and the poster is to keep it in keeping with the movie's theme. I also wanted it to become clear that the events of the film have already happened. There's nothing the viewer can do to save Darren. I was keen for Darren, like I have stated, to look normal, but also endearing to the audience. I did this using very simple mise-en-scène. He is dressed to match his age, his haircut youthful, but his stance is scared. Referring back to my texture and analysis work, I found that the base of my website needed to be in relation with the real media products. To sort this out, I added the copyright bars, both under the Awakening 14th of December 2010 strapline and at the base of the page. Putting the 2 major production companies, Twisted Pictures and Stevens Co. logo, down matched the conventions, while the privacy policy section created a more authentic feel. For this, I used the line tool, set to 4 bits, to create the divider line and set it to a colour which matches the typography. I also, for the basement copyright box, added a bevel and emboss effect to separate it from the main body of the website. Both products are incredibly direct, and intentionally so, to attract everybody possible. The biggest, brightest part of the product is the movie title, to inform the viewer straight away the brand name of my product, while the most centralised object, both in height and in width, is the trailer, my major selling point and something that will determine my movie sells well or not at the box office. For the poster, it was conventional to add the billing block at the base of the page. To make it seem that little bit more authentic, I used the font steel tongs to make it match more with posters used in real media products. Of course, I could have refuted this convention, and many have, but I believed it would have been on a whim, and I genuinely believed it was a factor that I seen as an essential component on a poster's structural setup. That's how I use conventions. But for the second question, I was required to answer how effective was the combination between your final task and the ancillary tasks. If you put all 3 products next to each other, it becomes obvious that they are for the same product. It was essential for me to establish this brand that should run through each one of the tasks. The colour scheme was vital towards doing this, and some of the most iconic logos, companies and films are based around their use of colour. By contradicting these conventions, which I have already spoken about, this made my movie unique, and I was keen to maximise this. By keeping your promotional campaign consistent in this way, you raise the chances of it becoming iconic. The font, Perpetua Titling, remains the same throughout, while the shade of red doesn't waver either. Looking at the marketing campaigns of some other films, it becomes evident that little factors like this remain constant throughout. The use of black and white images in both the website and the poster make them seem linked in some way, and I believe if you went on the website one night, then spotted the poster out in the next morning, you would instantly link the two. This text also appears in the trailer, along with the colour scheme, while the black and white imagery is lost. This is because the movie needs to be filmed in colour. You very rarely come across movies these days filmed entirely with a luminosity effect. The statement, "It will define them forever," and the strapline, "Awakening on the 14th of December," also feature in all three products, with the intention of becoming intrinsically linked with the movie in the same way, or even did for each of these movies. Each product establishes the main characters immediately, as Darren is centralised in the poster, he is left orientated in the website, people read from left to right, and is the first face we see in the trailer. It was important to do this because the audience needs to know who they should be relating to immediately to ensure they feel part of the storyline. They say less is more, and throughout each product I was keen to adhere to that belief. I deliberately avoided ostentatious effects for the very reason, and I believe it pays dividends. With all the text being centralised, with no filters or effects, the film's identity is very clean, almost religiously so. I used the statement "a Samuel Stevens film" throughout, also to make it clear who the director was. Films often do this in an attempt to influence people to flock to their local cinema. A high-profile director or production company normally is influence enough. And now for my third question, where I'll be talking about what I have learnt from my audience feedback. In this stage, I'll have interviews with members of my audience and pie charts and charts to suggest the flows and opinions of all of my audience. After the production of my trailer, poster and website, I needed to find out whether it was a success or not. I went about doing this using three mediums of information. Firstly, I conducted an audience questionnaire. Secondly, advertising my product on the internet, and finally interviewing members of my target audience. In the questionnaire, the first question I asked was, does being white orientated improve or ruin the effectiveness of the promotional campaign? The answer, as you can see, was reasonably resounding. I asked 20 people this question, and 16 replied that it was improving the campaign. Just one argued that it was ruined, while the 3 said they were unsure. I realised at the time this drastic shift was a risky manoeuvre, but I feel justified by these results, suggesting that it was a roaring success. Next, I wanted to know whether the aesthetics of my designs were up to scratch. I asked whether the aesthetics were effective, and again the results were flattering to a degree. Over 3/4 thought the work looked attractive, while 4 suggested it would have been better. Again, with an 80% success rate, I deemed it a success. Thirdly, I wanted to establish whether my characterisation, through the use of mise-en-scène I used, in all the images in my ancillary tasks and the shot types in the trailer, was effective in making the characters relatable with the audience. This time, while still being in the majority, the success rate was relatively lower this time, with 11 saying they felt they could relate with both characters, while Timothy gained 1/4 of the vote and Darren gained 1/8. It's understandable that Timothy proved solely popular because of his age and being considered cute. Additionally, children hold more affection amongst audiences in horror movies because they have their own life ahead of them. Timothy was installed as a warning shot across the bow for Darren, who discovers his death over the radio. I think this can still be deemed a victory for my representation because only 1/8 of the people suggested they struggled to relate to either character. Next, I asked whether or not they felt each task was relatable to one another. This was the most commendable result to date, as 18 out of 20 said the tasks were consistent with each other. This delighted me because I made a considerable effort to establish a brand for Angel of Death, which I believed could be spotted by a snippet of any one of the products I produced. Additionally, I asked whether or not the